Councillor Morin, we're just going to do a confirmation. We now have quorum here. Fantastic. Thanks so much. And we're going to get underway. Yes. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us for September 17th, 2025 regular council meeting. And I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the land in which we're gathered is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. This evening, we're joined by Peggy Carswell, who's going to talk about the Walk of Achievement that's going to be happening this Saturday. Peggy, over to you.
Thank you. I could have just sent the committee members, the council members, an email message about this, but I wanted to see you guys in person. I have been asked a while back by David Durant if I would attend the Walk of Achievement and say a few words about my connection with Jim Egan. Jim is one of the two people who will be acknowledged this Saturday, 12 noon at Sid Williams. And Jim and I got to know each other very well through my involvement with the CVRD, then called CSRD, in my term of office between 1985 and 1990. He was a great person to work with because of his diversity of interests and of involvement in the community, very active with the development of Seal Bay Park, and also, as many of you know, one of the pioneers in Canada who addressed issues of gay rights, spousal benefits, and also reached out to the community in many ways. And what I loved about Jim is that he didn't care what your gender was, what your age was, what your background was. He was welcoming and inclusive. And for me, just tell you a little personal note, when I worked in Victoria for a couple of years in the early 80s, came to the Valley in 72, did lots of different things. Diversity is one of my main interests. And when I returned from Victoria, I brought along with me my partner, Corinne. And shortly after that, I was elected to the CVRD and wasn't sure what kind of response I would get. But Jim had opened a lot of doors, had lots of discussions, and was an out member in the community and was accepted. And I think the fact that I could bring Corinne with me to Christmas parties and not end up having people look at me in an odd way, it gave me a lot of self-confidence and a sense of acceptance that means a lot to me personally. I also know that there have been some discussion in the community about finding some way to honor Jim, and I hope his partner John, for the dedication and the number of years that they have lobbied and they did things to support the queer community. And I'm really hopeful that given the community's involvement and embracement of people in our community from different identities, gender identities, that maybe we could work together to try and come up with something that's a good fit, both for the guys and for our community and for all the people that welcome being included, acknowledged, accepted by our community. I just want to mention briefly too, CVRD had found an old burl that had, I'm going to show it to you and then I'm going to stop talking. That had been put at Seal Bay Park, acknowledging the work that Jim did to help protect that area and make it into a park. And they're working right now on creating, this burl fell apart. They expanded the parking lot. This got pushed aside. I'm bringing it forward today because I want to see something happen that will also acknowledge Jim's work. So thanks for giving me a couple of minutes and for allowing me to come and see some of you in person. And I look forward to seeing some of you at Saturday's event.
Thanks so much. Oh, okay. Just before you leave, Peggy, I'm going to thank you, but we're going to do a little technical test. Councillor Morin, are you able to hear myself? And are you able to hear Peggy when she's talking? Were you able to hear her speech?
Oh, sorry, my audio wasn't on. Yes to both. Thank you.
Okay, so audio, we know audio is working at least for Councillor Moran. Thank you so much, former electoral area recovering politician Peggy Carswell for your speech today. Much appreciated.
There we go.
Thanks again. Very nice. Thanks again, Peggy. I really appreciate it. And we'll move into adoption of minutes from September 10th. Excellent. You guys will be doing a lot of that today, I think. So hopefully you've practiced. Are there any errors or omissions? Oh, Councillor Moran, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had my hand up a moment ago. Is it okay if I just address Peggy's I just wanted to thank Peggy for coming and say that I'm sorry that I wasn't there in person, and thank her for taking the effort to come to see council in person, even though we have small numbers tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Moran. And she's still in the gallery, so she's got a big smile and yeah, exactly. She's responding. So thanks so much, Councillor Moran. But we do have the minutes on the table. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept them unanimously and we'll move into staff reports, and we'll start with the 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities update from Mr. Garbutt, the city manager.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. I wanted to say and acknowledge our senior leadership team is here, their staff who they lead on behalf of the organization have delivered a significant amount of work. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on our 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities for council. There's a draft attached that provides a series of information points on items that have been concluded, items that we need to adjust the schedule on, and a general overview of the outcomes. Sorry. Would you just steal the water?
Water?
That's
Okay.
it. I'll get through it.
I got it.
Thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Sorry about that. The city has long relied on its strategic planning process to link community objectives, ongoing core work program, sustainable financial planning, asset management, and the organization's core values. This approach develops a multi-year strategy to address the service demands for Courtenay residents. When council returned following the 2021 election, we undertook a strategic planning process and we've reviewed it 3 times. This document, in addition to the day-to-day core activities, has our strategic priorities and continues to guide the work program for the city's service departments throughout council's term, has informed the development of the city's annual budget and 5-year financial plan. Just want to highlight in attachment 2 to the staff report, there's progress reports across the board. It is incredible how much work's been accomplished. A number of our strategic priorities are well underway. Some of them have been delayed primarily due to competing priorities and a great deal of provincial legislation. But I just want to highlight, I'll mention one thing from each department, of which there's a huge number of items. So in operational services, we completed a traffic calming policy and program, and we've piloted it in response to a very significant traffic issue in the back road. Our legislative and corporate services department does a number of things, but really want to highlight the website redesign and launch, which is a core to the operation of the city's business itself. Really, and that work came across the entire organization. In the planning department, we've moved forward with a series in development services of legislative responses to various bills from the provincial government, and it's quite impressive. This continues to set the stage for us to meet and hopefully exceed our housing targets that are mandated by the province. In our Recreation, Culture and Community Services Department, in addition to having record numbers of participants in our programming, one very important project was updating our playground standards through a really robust community engagement process. Our engineering and environmental services area undertakes the city's capital program. I just want to highlight a number of capital projects, including the First Street lift station. And then we just had a exciting meeting with the representatives of the Arden Green Team and the Arden Ambassadors and staff and council to start the Arden to Lake Trail multi-use pathway. And ultimately, these are the types of projects that meet our community's needs, and we really are excited to continue to see that move forward. In our financial services area, we launched a new financial planning software, which continues to keep us all on track. There are numerous projects that happen every day. I just wanted to highlight some important ones that council has given us direction on. Starting on page 2 of the staff report, page 9 of the agenda, we have a series of what through conversations with council were some really critical 2025, remainder of 25 and moving into 26 projects. And there's detailed information on these individual projects broken down by component parts. And we wanted to provide that as council had identified they're really quite important, and that information is available for the community. There are some other key initiatives that run in parallel to our strategic priorities that are outlined through this table, moving on to page 4, completing on page 4 of the staff report, page 11 of the agenda, that are important and illustrates that in addition to these specific strategic priorities, we do have important but notable core work. We're looking for council to endorse the draft strategic plan update, and their recommendation on page 5 of the staff report is that council receive the update on progress towards the 2023-2026 strategic priorities for the city of Courtenay, and update the strategic priorities to reflect the new items and adjusted timelines in attachment 2, and direct staff to report back on strategic priorities in February, July, and September of 2026 as we close out council's term. All of our members of senior leadership are here if any members of council had questions. Thanks for the opportunity to update you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mr. Garbett. And looking to council members, if you have any questions, again, it's great to take a look at the things that we've been talking about, some of us for quite some time, maybe 11 years, and seen them come to completion. And again, as we have just over a year left, I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have the same sentiments and wanted to move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Thanks for that. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And the motion carries. So thanks very much, Mr. Garbett. Appreciate it. Did you have a follow-up? All right. And we'll move into external reports and correspondence from the Ombudsman. First of all. Mr. Garbett.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we've been receiving a series of ombudsperson's reports fast and furious. I think they've had some reporting delays. As outlined in this report, we have very few interactions with the ombudsperson's department, but as I said in our last council meeting, it's a very important opportunity for members of the public to engage with and provide queries and responses to their concerns. We continue to hopefully do our very best job, and as reported here, we didn't have any significant issues through that quarterly period.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Seeing that this is just for receipt, I'll receive it unanimously on behalf of council, and we'll move into first and second readings. So we got the zoning amendment bylaw 3108 for 2270 Cliff Avenue, and I'll pass it over to our city manager, Jeff Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we have a very important zoning amendment for 2270 Cliff Avenue. The applicant is online with us and is going to do a short presentation. Our manager of development planning, Janae Shealy, is going to introduce the staff report for council's consideration. And council could be free to ask questions of the applicant as they present, or hold your questions because we'll ask the applicant to be online to interact following Ms. Shealy's presentation. I'll turn it over to, and I'm not sure who from the project will lead it on behalf of Mansfield Center Inc., but please feel free to start.
Perfect. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to present our, I believe, excellent project. Firstly, I would like to introduce our team today here. So we have here Chance for the acquisition department. There is also Matthew with us for the property management department. And then there is for project management department, there is some of you may know already, Vanya and I. And this is it for our team today. At the same time, as you might know, like today, there were more than 50 professionals worked on this project to date. So we are happy that we made it finally to the council meeting. And if we could start with the presentation, I'm like not sure who is like controlling the screen. Maybe we could start. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So the name of our project is Sky Park Landing. You might tell by the name that we inspired by the Air Park strip, which is next door. The basic, very basic information about our project. It is providing 137 apartment homes, 11 new retail commercial spaces, new streetscape landscape frontage with trees along Cliff and Mansfield Drive, which will, and then the main amenities would be secured bike parking, Sky Court Lounge, and new vibrant boulevard. And yes, thank you for with regards to design inspiration, maybe Chance or Vanya could speak a bit more to this.
Sure. So what we do usually when we design a new development is we try to tie in to a theme in the city. So when we were in Courtenay, we saw the airport there and we quite liked it. So we told the architect and design team, try to tie into that natural amenity in the area and draw some inspiration from it. So that's how the name Sky Park Landing came about. You see on picture number 1, that's a picture of the Sky Park right there, the air park. And we try to incorporate some of the theme into the gazebo. So on the second floor, we call it the Sky Court, basically an open lounge for barbecue, picnics, picnic area for the residents. So there'll be a gazebo in the shape of a wing there. And then on the picture number 4, Van, can you speak a little bit about the design of the planes? And yeah.
So in picture number 4, this is the intersection of Mansfield and Cliff, and right at the intersection we have these benches that are in shape of folded airplanes. These benches will be located at different locations as well. In yellow, this strip depicts the landing strip.
Yeah,
as well.
it's like when you land an airplane, you know, you're landing on a strip. So there'll be a design like that in the sidewalks, right? In the paving area there.
Exactly.
So-
And then also if you can look at the gate there under the sidewalk, under the canopy, that depicts the transition. So depicts the transition of when you're walking from one terminal to another terminal. Also in picture number 5, this is the main entry to the residential lobby, and the canopy depicts the wings of an airplane.
Yeah, like a wingspan, it'll be a arc to it. So the feedback from the Air Park Association was they really felt this development will enhance the beauty and character of the area. It's going to bring new vitality to the business area and much needed homes. They were also happy to see that we acknowledge the legacy of their air park and sort of reinforce the contributions that they feel the air park gives to the local community. And it was a fun project. The design team really enjoyed working with it, you know, making it more playful, having the paper themes, the paper airplane theme in the benches.
And this was basically to connect the project with the neighborhood.
Yes.
And the goal was to incorporate very subtle elements that would connect the project.
Yeah. We also try to tie it into something in the community because when we build a development, we're building a new community. So we want to be part of the community. So this next slide here is before and after pictures. So right now, if you look at slide number 1, the picture number 1, that's what you see there. It's an old building. It's right on Cliff Avenue, so it's quite visible. And I think it's a bit of an eyesore. And usually with such high traffic, you want something new, more modern, more refreshing to represent your city. So on the right side, you have a part of a
This is the
illustration here.
Yeah, this is the boulevard. And as you can see, currently the parking, there's a lot of parking on Cliff and Mansfield. And the goal was to remove all the parking and to have a clear facade. And so that's why we treated Cliff and Mansfield as the front facade. And we've concealed the parking in the backside of the project. This is to establish connection with the street and with the pedestrians.
So picture 3, that's down the cliff
That's Mansfield.
Mansfield view, right? And then after in picture 4, you'll be seeing this nicely landscaped tree, lots of space. How wide are those sidewalks there?
It's around 7 meters.
7 meters, that's like 20 some
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of landscaping, new trees, lots of benches. So you could just grab a quick bite and enjoy
Yeah.
with your friends.
Grab a coffee. There's lots of canopy there, right? Overhang there for shading and for when it rains. Okay, let's go next one. Martin, maybe you can speak a bit about this. The theme on this slide is building a community with bike-friendly homes. Martin is a senior project manager. He loves bikes. He's probably, I don't know how many bikes he has, but he has more than one for sure.
3.
He's always going to Squamish and Whistler. So Martin, you can maybe speak a bit about this?
Sure. I'm a little bit of bike enthusiast, sport enthusiast, but with regards biking and parking for the bikes, our project will provide 286 bike parking, and the big feature in our eyes and in our experience from other projects is secured bike storage in the parking stall, which is not very typical, and you could see it in the picture. Residents will have option to park their car, and right in front of their car there will be door to their own private storage locker where they can park their fancy e-bike and they can charge it as well. And we are doing this together with the common bike rooms. We have several bike rooms throughout the building. And with regards car parking, we are providing 166 parking stalls, and 22 of them will have EV chargers, and the remaining stalls in the building will have EV roughing. It tells you that we are doing quite a bit above the requirements. And
So
maybe
in the bottom right here, you have a picture of the example of the parking stall. And then the door behind it is the door to the storage room right in front of their parking. And then to the right of it is a floor plan showing the parking and the storage locker behind the parking. You see where the door walks in, and it's right there.
And we've done this at our previous project, and it was very well received. People loved it.
people
Oh,
love
they
that.
love it, yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
people love it.
convenient because your storage is right near your parking stall. It's so convenient. And at the top, we're basically looking at the homes here. We're proposing 137 new homes. And the breakdown is 3-bedroom dens, 5. Sky Park average square feet is 1,150. Courtenay average square feet for new construction is, we have 1,000 there, but actually that's a bit of a mistake. There's people don't actually build 3 bedrooms because they don't really make sense. But we can explain a bit later about why we decided to do so. 2-bedroom den, 71. Our average square feet is 1,000. New construction, you'd be lucky if you get 850. One in den, proposing 44. Average square feet is 650. New construction about 600. Studios, we're doing 17 of 500 square feet. What we're finding very common is people are building these micro suites, which are 350 square feet. I mean, that's fancy word for shoebox. I mean, I'm not a fan of those. I don't think they're livable. And a market with a shortage of housing, people live anywhere, but doesn't mean that you should build, something that's so unlivable. Especially in Courtenay, where it's more of an island living lifestyle. People go there to get away from the hustle and bustle of the big city. They want more space, they want more community feel, they want fresh air. They want more space in their home as well as outdoors. You have anything to add to that about the lifestyle, Matthew?
Yeah, so the lifestyle, we want to promote lifestyles, right? So if we constrain the resident in such a small enclosed space, it doesn't promote gatherings, like building the community, inviting parents, inviting friends, inviting colleagues into their home and building that sense of community and having that tight-knit community makes such a big difference.
So one more point is, on average, our units are 25% bigger than typically what developers will build. And we're building 3 bedrooms because we felt there was a need in doing our research for young families, that couldn't afford a home but want to live in an apartment, right? So we felt that there was a need for that. That's why we made these units bigger, and we made a bigger mix of options for the residents. Are there any other comments on that? Okay, let's go on the next one.
And I think you're only about halfway through the slides, but you're
Okay.
you're about 10 minutes in, so I
Okay,
may
we'll go.
want to leave some time for questions.
Sure.
So go through the slides, but I wouldn't
Sure.
go into so much detail.
Okay, the main point here is the investment's $50 million investment in Courtenay. And that's going to comprise of a new pedestrian crossing, a new bus shelter. We'll go into detail about that. And a new improved streetscape. Okay, the next slide. This just talks about the crossing. There's a crossing we're proposing right here across Cliff. To your left and right here is the yellow, there's bike paths here. Right now, there's no connection to these areas. So we're proposing a new bus stop at the top here, which will pay for 100% of that. And if the crossing, we'll pay for the design costs with our consultants and our design team. And we're proposing that city pays for the installation of that. The design costs, we anticipate to be about 50% of the total cost. The reason why we're not paying for 100% is because partly this crossing is needed regardless of whether we do this development or not, because this crossing will serve the whole neighborhood. It's not just going to benefit Sky Park, it'll benefit the whole neighborhood. All right, go to the next one. Affordable housing contribution. What we're going to be doing is the CMHC federal government program, which 10% of the homes will be deemed affordable. The criteria is 30% below median rental income for a period of 10 years. And this is a common program that CMHC utilizes across Canada that cities use to create homes for their program. Now, keep in mind, our studios are in essence 1 bedrooms because we have large studios and they have bedrooms in them, and they can fit a king size bed. But because they don't have a window, they can't officially call them 1 bedrooms. But in essence, we're going to have availability of studios and 1 bedrooms for affordability. And our square footage in our studios for 14 total 7,000 square feet. Typically, developers build studios are 350 square feet, so they're providing 5,900 square feet. So if you convert, because we build larger than average sizes, if you look at total square footage and you convert it to 350, we're actually providing 21, right? If you do the math, but if there's any questions, we can get into that, but that's kind of the summary of that. And then if you go into the next slide, it's just the example of typical Courtenay development, 350 micro unit, pretty much like a little shoebox. Then you look at Sky Park, our studio. You walk in here, there's a bathroom, bedroom here, can fit a king size bed, open kitchen, open dining room, living room, and there's a balcony there. Okay, next one. I don't think we need to cover this one. That's it. So if you have any questions, we can take some questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I appreciate you, for council's benefit, this was close to 30 slides. And so I really appreciate you getting it down to the core parts of the project. And at this point, I'll open it up to council members for any questions or comments they might have, and we'll start with Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have a few different questions on this development. But I think my first questions are just around the crossing. I'm glad to see some slides included in this, and I certainly agree that this is a much needed crossing, and it's not new to council that this is required here. You're certainly speaking to the choir. It's come up with other proposed developments in this corridor that we've wanted to see this addressed. I'm not sure how familiar you are with our own official community plan, but there is a requirement when we do rezoning that community amenity contributions are provided in order to recognize the lift that we receive from a zoning application. In this case, zoning application changes around higher building height, almost double what the current zoning is, higher floor ratio, which I think is maybe 4 times or close to 4 times what the current zoning is. So there's a lot being asked for, and I like what you presented. I think overall what you're showing is going to be an improvement on that corner. I certainly agree. And so, yeah, as part of that, I would certainly want to see a crossing, among other things, be developed as part of the improvements on this corner. But one thing, and this is maybe a question for our staff, the report mentions a flashing crosswalk. The picture that's provided in the slides you showed is also a flashing crosswalk over what looks to be a nice, narrow, and not too busy street. And what we're looking at is an extremely wide road with 2 lanes each way and some middle lanes in the middle. It's extremely wide. It's one of the busiest corridors in our community, and to me, I'm surprised at the suggestion that a pedestrian activated flasher would adequately address safety concerns and people crossing. So to me, this needs probably some careful thought as to the best way to implement a crossing, and I do think that the contribution needs to be more than providing a design, which I'm not sure is adequate, and I'm not quite sure who would ultimately decide on that, given that this is a ministry road. So I guess my initial question is, where does the flashing crosswalk, where does that idea come from? And I did look at the traffic study. It's not on the agenda, but I did ask for it from staff. And there's a discussion of a lighted crosswalk and intersection improvements, but I didn't see anywhere that mentioned that a flashing crosswalk would be the recommended improvement. So I just want some information on that, and to express that I think it needs to be certainly more than just providing design on something that is a major change and absolutely required if we're going to put all these units and new businesses on that corner.
And so I wonder, is that something, Jamae, that you might be able to speak to a little bit? And I know staff have their own introduction as well, but I know we've kind of jumped into the questions here, but if you would.
I can actually hold off if staff want to. I wasn't really sure if there was going to be a presentation as well, so I can just wait for an answer on that if we want to move over to the staff presentation. But maybe the respondent or the proponent wants to respond just on their proposal to limit their contribution to design, and then staff can answer the rest of it later.
I think my comments on that would be keep in mind there's other contributions like utility upgrades. Wanting to maybe speak a bit about that?
Yeah.
Like we are going to be providing some utility upgrades and doing other upgrades for the neighborhood, but I mean the need for the pedestrian crossing, whatever type of crossing it is, there is significant need for the crossing at the moment without our project being built. So it is something that is needed by the whole neighborhood. And us facilitating the design, it is not something easy. It is like our team together with our consultant team. We have spent quite a bit of time together with the staff of the city of Courtenay already, because we provided several reports which were to the city of Courtenay, and they were given to the Minister of Transportation. And staff could probably speak a bit better to the communication with the Ministry of Transportation. But we are not at the end of the design process. Once, and hopefully this gets approved by the Ministry of Transportation, there will be the design process, which we are offering to facilitate, and it will be, given how time consuming it was to get here, it will be very time consuming. So it is, in our eyes, way more than fair if our only project, if you look at the whole neighborhood, how much of the whole neighborhood takes our project, and we are proposing to facilitate all the design cost, which will be representing like 50% of the cost. That's way more than fair in our eyes.
And also keep in mind the bus shelter, we're paying for 100% of that cost.
Yes, I did see that in the
Yeah, so
proposal.
I think,
So,
yeah.
sorry to cut you off. I just want to clarify that community amenity contributions are outlined in our OCP, and there is a list provided. I'm not sure if it's been reviewed with staff, but it includes things like street works and landscape, boulevard and buffered areas, which you highlighted in your report. Sidewalks and trails, parkland and facilities, open spaces for passive park use, recreation space and equipment, community activity centers, daycare centers, art, culture, library facilities, and then, of course, the affordable housing piece that's spoken to in the report. I don't know that utility upgrades is normally considered as part of that. And I am recognizing that it is a current need that exists, but part of development, and I mean, it is in our policies, and I would encourage you to look at them, is that when we look at rezoning, we look at a contribution to the community for amenities that are needed, which this would certainly fall into that category. And I do recognize there is a lot of complexity around the road and having to deal with provincial ministry that could complicate this matter significantly. But there is also a provision in that same section of our policy that allows for a financial contribution to be made in order for the city to undertake that work. So I wouldn't think that that would really limit us in this situation to address this crossing, even if it is perhaps going to be a more protracted process. So I would encourage you to think about that, and I'll leave my comments at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Morin, did you have questions for the proponent or for staff?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but some of them are for staff. But I guess one question is, because we have received quite a few comments from the public, because this proposed development is, exceeds, in terms of the presence of it, exceeds what's been there normally, and just concern around, sort of towering over other apartment buildings, etc. So my question is around the courtyard aspect, which I do like. It looks from the renderings that that courtyard is open on the, I don't know if it's considered the east side or the air park side of the building, and I guess it would just have some clear fence, like deck railings or something like that. I'm just wondering if you can clarify that, because I'm wondering, and I'm also, I guess, wondering whether you've done the drawings in terms of the shade, the
yeah, shade
project,
impact.
the shade
Yeah,
impact. Thank you.
Couple of comments to that is Number one, there previously was an 8-story building approved here, back in
Slide number 9.
2008. And currently our proposal is 6 stories, and there's some terracing as well. Do you
Yeah.
have a picture of that?
Yeah, if you can go to slide 13.
Yeah. So when you do the terracing, the net effect is when you're a pedestrian on the sidewalk, it appears to be even lower than 6 stories. There's also, maybe you could speak about a bit of the shade impact, Martin?
Sure. For most of the projects nowadays, you do
Slide 12.
uh,
Slide 12.
yeah. Slide 12, yes.
Yes,
We
perfect.
do
Thank you.
a shadow study for most of the projects. And this was, I believe, staff at the beginning of the project, the design of the project, who reminded us, make sure you don't forget to do the shadow study, which we did. And then, based on the shadow study, staff requested we do the terracing, which we had no problem to do so, because it basically resulted out of the shadow study. So that's more than it was required to do by the shadow study, and you could see the details of the terracing. And also to answer the question, the Sky Court is open towards the east, as it was mentioned, and so is the terracing of the building is towards the east.
Yeah, thanks.
Raised and it was addressed.
So yeah, I'll look back in the staff report for the details on the shade impact because I guess I
Or picture of the previously approved 8-story building. If you go to slide number
9.
9, you'll see a visual of what was previously approved. On the left is what was previously approved, and then on the right is our new proposal. It's much more fitting with the community in terms of size and scope and design. Before it was, I think, approved for 8 stories, but we scaled it down actually. And then with terracing, it's going to feel more like a 4-story.
And nice continuation of the Trumpeters Landing, how we are
Yeah.
terracing it. So it's not like a step, it's like gradually step up
Yes.
from the Trumpeters Landing.
It'll fit in nicely. We've seen this type, done this type of development before, so
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I may
Well-
have some more questions for staff after. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, thanks, Councillor Moran. Staff, did you want to speak to the staff report, Jimmy? I know we jumped into the proponent there, but if staff wanted to speak to their report, and then there's likely going to be some questions from council from that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to kind of sum up a few of the points that we already heard from the applicant, as well as focus my comments specifically to the land use as it relates to our own policies and regs. So just to provide some general context, the bylaw before you for amendment would create a new comprehensive development zone, CD 44, and that would allow up to a 6-story mixed-use building with ground floor commercial and 137 residential units. The current site, as we've heard, is at Cliff Avenue and Mansfield Drive. This is currently occupied by a 2-story shopping center built in 1976. The property is within the urban corridor designation in our OCP, which supports multi-unit residential, mixed-use and commercial development, mid-rise 5 to 6 stories, and high-rise 7 to 8 stories building form, which is consistent with the proposal before you. We've already heard 137 residential units with a mixed typology of studio, 1, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom units. A commercial space is just over 1,000 meters square with 11 units proposed. The zone itself will retain many of the same commercial uses as it has now, as well as complementary uses that are found in our mixed-use zone. The public realm, we heard in detail from our applicants, there's improvements relating to landscaping, seating, sidewalk connectivity on the 3 sides. With respect to traffic safety, this is expected to improve due to removal of an existing 3rd vehicle access on Mansfield. Parking has been a focus of this particular application, and the proposal, as outlined, follows recommendations from a parking study. The proposal includes 166 stalls, This represents a slight reduction from the standard 1.2 stalls for residential units, including 10% visitor. This puts us at 0.94% per unit, but shared visitor parking. I want to point this out because this is a very interesting concept and the first proposal of its kind in Courtenay that I'm aware of, where we're actually sharing parking between residential, visitor, and commercial on one site. So there was careful consideration given to this, as well as following of current best practices in the industry. So what that means, commercial parking is reduced by about 1/3 compared to standard rates, reflecting a complementary time of day usage and industrial best practices, as I've noted. Visitor parking can be shared with commercial uses that close by 6 p.m. based on complementary demand. We talked a little bit about bike parking already. I won't go in too much detail here, but also letting you know that the zone itself will require 235 stalls. The applicant is already exceeding that with 286 stalls. Also wanted to note that 22 stalls, parking stalls, will have a level 2 EV charger installed, and all the stalls will be EV ready. With respect to servicing infrastructure, this has been assessed. City sewer and water system capacity is confirmed, and there are no constraints in terms of development on this property to the capacity as proposed. With respect to our housing affordability contribution, under the OCP Community Amenity Contribution, we have a target of 15% of additional units should be secured below market housing. That would be about 16 units in this case. And as well as that, we have a 30% below market target in perpetuity. The applicant is proposing 14 development market units. That's about 10.2% of our target. The rent is set below 30% of the median renter income, approximately $1,150 per month per studio. And they're proposing a 10-year term and also the smaller unit mix being studios, as you've heard. With respect to public engagement, through the city's required notification period, there's been 19 people that provide written comment. Staff have confirmed that 13 have confirmed local residents. Of these, the land use themes are height, potential of shadowing, character of the neighborhood, traffic volume, and safety. If this were to be supported by council, the next steps would involve giving first and second reading of the bylaw before you. And then following that, staff would work with the applicant to satisfy any conditions of rezoning, such as noted in the report, inclusion of a covenant to provide cash in lieu for frontage improvements and a bus shelter, as well as drafting a housing agreement bylaw for council's consideration at third and adoption. With that, I conclude. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And there may be some questions, and I see Councillor Moore, your hand is still up. So you said you might have some staff questions.
Sorry, I was finding my audio button. I'm going to wait. Thank you. Sorry, I'll lower my hand for now.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Moore, and I'll pass over to Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Thanks for the report. It's great to see this coming forward. I think this size and type of development in this area makes a lot of sense. I'm actually surprised to hear that the original building is 1967. It seems older than that.
75, 1975-ish.
Yeah, I don't know. That caught my attention. I would have guessed that it's been around for longer than I've been around, but apparently not. And the shared parking makes a lot of sense with a development like this. It's good to see that that's going to be incorporated into the way that we look at these type of mixed use developments. One question I had was around the zoning for the commercial, just looking at the uses. I can certainly understand that we wouldn't have unrestricted commercial use in something that has a lot of residents over top. I think one of the restrictions pointed out was that it's not a great place for a nightclub or a theater, which makes sense to me. But and then it does list a variety of things that are allowed, but I didn't see daycare in there, which I don't know if we just simply allow daycares everywhere, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not restricting something like that that could be community use, and whether or not
it is as prescriptive as the list that's in the staff report, or if there is more things that are allowed under that. And that was like an example of the things that could be. I just want to make sure I understand what we're allowing and restricting.
And Mr. Garbutt has a comment.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I know Ms. Shealy's quickly looking, but ultimately we were responding to the development program, I think, from the developer. If council is suggesting that we should be inclusive on the event that somebody was interested in putting a daycare in, we have had instances where we've had to do rezonings for daycares. If my memory serves me correct, that was in industrial zoning, but that is a good point. So perhaps the applicant could respond to see if they were interested in daycare, but we can always provide that. But if Ms. Shealy can provide more insight, that'll be great.
Thank you, Mr. Garbutt. Looking to the proposed bylaws, Schedule A, daycare is included as one of the permitted uses in the zone.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. I just wanted that double checked. Yeah, and then just circling back to that pedestrian crossing commentary, I guess one is whether or not we have really explored the flasher. Just in reading that, it surprised me that that would be adequate. I know the only other pedestrian crossing that's gone in on Mott Road in my time was installed at North Island College across Ryan Road, which is not as wide as the crossing that we're talking about, and it is like a proper lit crossing. So just wanted some detail on that. Of course, a proper light is in fact likely to be more expensive than a flasher. And yeah, just if staff could provide some commentary on what would really be required in order to make that a safe connection.
And Mr. Garbutt has a comment.
I'll respond to before Ms. Shealy. So council is aware that this is an MOTT controlled roadway. So they would prescribe what type of improvement would be acceptable to them. The concepts we communicated with the island director that it's extremely important. We discussed the distances between controlled access points, and that remains a matter that we are not going to drop as a municipality, regardless of the outcome of this development, because we have significant density planned in that precinct itself, and we also have future local area planning. And so a 900-meter distance between pedestrian controlled crossing, whether it's a full movement intersection or not, is something that we're not happy with. And we also have correspondence in from the Comox Valley Accessibility Committee in response to that. So applicant is in support, staff are in support, council is in support, and we need to ultimately get the Minister of Transportation on board with this, and then they will prescribe whatever design that is. And the applicant in our conversation yesterday with the mayor had said that they've done some analysis as to what could go there. Ultimately, who will prescribe what goes there is the Ministry of Transportation. And safety, sightlines, braking distances, all those things will be factored into what specifics can happen there. And if I understood correctly from the applicant yesterday in our conversation, it's preliminary design, but I'll let them maybe speak to that point because they've undertaken that work so far. And if Ms. Shealy has something more to add, please go ahead.
Thank you. The only thing I can add to that, having confirmed with staff, is that the applicant in 2024, through their consultants, were the one originally proposing a flashing crosswalk as an opportunity at that crossing area. However, I will also defer to the words of our CAO. Ultimately, any design considerations would be obviously to the standards of MOTI in the city itself. So I think those were just initial dialogue that was had. Nothing was committed, or nothing being secured specifically around the crossing itself or the type of crossing that would make the most sense there.
Yeah, thanks for that additional information. Yeah, another thing that jumped out at me is that there's been 19 accidents at this intersection in the last 5 years, and that doesn't meet the requirement for an improvement in terms of whatever the technical standards are. But to me, just underscores that it's really not a safe place for pedestrians to be crossing when there's that kind of frequency of accidents. So yeah, perhaps there's a need for us to further elevate this with our provincial partners, as this is an area that we're interested in seeing development. And, you know, we're requiring a bus stop as part of the improvements. Yet, you know, if people who live in this building are traveling back the other way, it's like they could potentially have to walk another 400 meters to get around to the other side of the road. It's not, it's just not, it's not adequate. And there's no other lights on, so I guess I'll just keep going through my questions, if that's okay with you, Mayor.
Yep.
One question I had is that I noticed in the zoning requirements that there's 100% of the parking stalls need to be EV ready. And that seems like a high number, especially given that some of the parking stalls are not within the envelope of the building. And I'm just wondering why we have like such a restrictive requirement that it wouldn't be just, you know, slightly more flexibility in case there's a few parking stalls that don't really meet that. You know, I think the percentage of ones that have charging is reasonable given where we are with EV adoption. But yeah, 100% seems like a lot. And I'm just wondering where that comes from. I assume this isn't the only development we've asked for that.
Thank you for the question, and I think it's a very good question indeed. It is a conversation that we've been having internally as we're seeing new applications coming forward, keeping in mind our overarching climate action goals. With respect, in this case, and the applicant itself may also further have comment on this. So when we talk about EV ready, when they're constructing the building, we understand it's actually more beneficial to both the developer at the time and to any future users of the building to install that vital infrastructure at that time of development versus trying to retrofit later down the road. It's a cost consideration. So in this case, they would literally be providing the, if you like, the wiring that is needed for EV. They will not, other than the 22 units, they would not be including the chargers. So it's just making sure that the kind of the internal infrastructure that's needed to support EV, both currently and longer term, is made part of the, you know, the development of this building as a cost savings and also as an advantage to future people that may reside there.
Yeah, and I definitely understand that. I guess my concern is that it could be adding additional costs that aren't necessary if we're requiring it for 100% of stalls, and some are, you know, less convenient to run wiring or a conduit, or I think it says conduit. I mean, the way EVs are now that are coming out need to be plugged into a level 2 charger for maybe 8 hours a week. So I can't foresee a time when every parking stall is going to need to have that kind of connection, because those type of vehicles just don't need to be plugged in all the time when they're parked. So it seems like we're asking a lot. I mean, I know that this isn't something that is a major additional cost because it is basically just the piping, but I do wonder if we should leave it up to the developer to have a little bit of flexibility there, just in case that there's, you know, we create some kind of additional complexity that really isn't necessarily going to deliver a better end result in 10, 20 years when most people have converted. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And I'm just trying to think if I had anything else I wanted to raise.
May I respond? I was just recalling we had a meeting this week with a landscape architect for another development. We were talking about the EV charging, and through that dialogue, to kind of the similar line of your thought in terms of costs and the longevity and what the future may look like with respect to EVs. In that case, we were looking at maybe a combination, not necessarily requiring level 2. To your point, because level 1 is about the time and duration that the vehicles need to be there for charging. So in that case, he was suggesting that we provide a level of flexibility between level 1 and level 2.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I mean, it's new technology, so we're adapting, and, you know, buildings last a lot longer than cars. So I understand that it's, you know, not necessarily clear what the best way to you know, predict what future need is. So I do appreciate that we're trying to incorporated. I just think maybe 100% is too high. And I don't, is that coming from current practice, or is like, I don't remember that in our OCP, but I didn't go and look. Maybe we already have it in our policies and we've asked for it in the past. I'm not sure.
I believe it's consistent with the intent of the policy. Whether it stipulates the level of the charger, I'd be less clear on.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, my recollection is, you know, conduit was the first step to make sure that it was future ready, and then whatever was required could be added at a later date. Which again provides, I think, that level of flexibility. Other than you have to have the conduit in there, but then you can put whatever is required at a later time.
Wendy got her.
All right. Yep. And we have Councillor Morin, and Councillor Morin, after you, we do have Councillor Frisch, but I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Morin.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I was having a major sneezing fit there. Good thing there was no audio. Yeah, I have a question about, I really appreciate the sort of streetscape design and those wide sidewalks and the opportunity to have benches and to kind of spill out, have that kind of open area. So I guess my question's more for staff though, in terms of the sidewalk patio policy, does that only apply to the downtown, the boundaries of the sort of the BIA, yeah, the downtown, does it apply to this area? Because I guess I'm just thinking it would be great to, you know, have some of these developments that would have coffee shops, that would have patio seating and that kind of thing. So just curious whether it's allowed in that area.
Or my bad for touching those. I'm used to turning them on and off. It's so if I'm understanding the question correctly, it was asking whether the current city's sidewalk patio permitting process would apply to this area, or is it limited to the downtown?
Mhm.
I believe it's limited to the downtown core as is right now. But yeah, it potentially could have a revisit if it made sense in other areas, but right now it's limited to the downtown core.
Right. So if that was a commercial interest for this type of development, what would be the process to to a to allow that?
Thank you, through the mayor. Would just broaden a little bit. Atypically, that kind of patio and private use of public space is usually for infill or core area development. When we have a property like this where people are changing that zone, that's often incorporated into the design. If there was more, perhaps there was more affordable residential or something done that warranted access to public property for that, that might be a consideration. But I just would advise that typically in this kind of, although it's technically infill, it's not kind of core area infill. But if the applicant was interested in the utilization of the public space, that's certainly something that we could consider an approach, and we have approval ways. We would probably, if we had and needed to do that, use the patio policy. But in this case, there wouldn't be public parking and as impacted. Like the downtown patio policy is really designed to balance private interest and the loss of parking areas and how to design those. So we could certainly draw inspiration from it.
Yeah, thanks. No, I thanks for that explanation. I just think that part of the, I guess, the conflict with, you know, with these developments is just the sort of livability, walkability, and you know, we have the pubs just next door that have obviously as part of their property outside dining, etc. So I hear what you're saying, though it would need to be included in their own kind of footprint, I guess. Yeah, I think that's my only question for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moran, and we'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to get some clarity around the EV readiness. I wasn't quite clear. What is being required of this development? Is it in fact just conduit, or is it also wiring, or is it maybe some combination of both? What exactly is being required? And it sounds like the proponents are endorsing whatever it is, but I just want to get clear on what those numbers look like.
Yes, thank you for the question on clarity. It's 100% conduit, and 22 have to be fully
Awesome.
fully EV
Fired
level
up.
2.
Yeah, thanks. And so I don't see a problem with having 100%. So I'm just going to counter some of the other comments. I think it's great, and it sounds like there's not a lot of complaints coming from the proponents. So happy to see that. And just in general, I'm really happy with this development, what it looks like, and it sounds like the city and the proponent are working well together to get this moving forward. So thanks very much.
And Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the housing piece that's laid out in the report. I should say the affordable housing piece specifically. Under our OCP, the guideline is 15% below market as part of an amenity contribution, and it's not prescriptive, but that is the policy, and it is not normally with a timeline. It's not where the starting point is, and what is laid out in this proposal is around 10%, which is better than zero. But it's also limited to 10%. And more importantly, it is, from what I understand, from what the proponent has provided, a requirement of meeting their financing obligations. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it is how I understood what was provided, is that in order to obtain the CMHC funding, that is the requirement in order to qualify for that program. So to me, that's a little bit separate and apart from what we would expect in the city. And I do understand that what's possible is connected to what works with capital financing, and perhaps this is as good as it gets, and I can understand that. But what I don't understand, if it is related to financing, is why it would be limited to a 10-year period. That's actually, seems to me, a fairly short amount of time, given what we've done in the past with our other housing agreements. And so I just wanted to comment that, to me, that is at least one piece where this could easily be adjusted from how I understand financing works. The biggest financial burden is in, the first 5 years of a development when you've got the highest debt burden. And so I'm not sure why after 10 years you wouldn't be able to carry on providing a subsidy that's already existed. So I do have a question on this, and that is how long the period has been on our previous housing agreements on recent rezoning. And I recognize that the staff member that's answering questions here does not have this institutional knowledge. So I'm not sure if that's available at someone's fingertips, but my recollection is that it's normally longer than 10 years. So if anyone's able to answer that.
Is it possible for me to make a comment on the question there?
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing is regards to the 10%. Keep in mind our units are 500 square feet on average instead of the typical 350 square feet. So if you work out our total square footage that we're providing, it actually exceeds more than 10%. What did you calculate to be, Matthew? Like the square footage is 350 and ours is 500.
Yeah, that's correct. So so I went and looked at the comparables that is in the area in Courtenay. So the studio units that's being currently offered is much lower, substantially much lower than us.
Like lower square footage.
Lower square footage. So with the 14 homes at 500 square feet per homes, that makes it at 7,000 square feet. And if we were to build 300 square feet, yeah, we could put more, but you are diminishing the living standard of the resident. So we value improving the living standard of the resident over jamming in more homes.
Yeah.
To meet the requirement.
Yeah, we didn't want to make a bunch of micro units and then meet the requirement. We just don't feel that's the right thing to do because you're building something that we don't believe in. They're not really livable. I mean, it's great. It's a housing shortage, but
yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna pass it back to Councillor McCollum because I don't think that's the question she was asking. I think her question was more around the 10-year limit versus a longer year limit, and I'm not sure when you were looking at the other comparables in the community at the 350 square foot, if you also looked at the term of the 30% below market. Is that something you looked at when you were doing your performas?
sorry, can you clarify the question?
So on the screen that we have, the slide that we have up right now, it talks about the period of 10 years.
Yes.
And that 10 years on other developments, I think, has been a different number. But maybe I'll pass it back to Councillor McCollum and she can articulate just in case I'm missing the mark as well.
With regards to the 10 years, keep in mind in the beginning, the operating expenses of the building is lower because it's new. But like a car, the older it gets, the higher the expense ratio to maintain the property becomes. So if CMHC required 20 or 30 years, it would disincentivize developers from doing it because it kind of counterproductive because as the car gets older, you actually need more maintenance, not less, right? Typically the interest rates are set for periods of 10 years, 5 years, whatever you pick, right? So that's a stable thing, but that can also increase or decrease, right? It's just that's the program they set for this kind of program. It's called the MRI Select, which is a mixture of affordability and energy efficiency. So based on that, they set the criteria for 10 years and we said, okay, that's fine. We'll meet that criteria.
Yeah, to be clear, we don't set our policies based on CMHC and, prior, when this policy was laid out, it was before these funding programs, I believe, were in place. But I mean, that's a new one. As far as I've heard, that your operating costs could actually exceed your financing obligations. I'd need to see the numbers on that to believe it. To me, the what's laid out here is the bare minimum in order to get the financing. It's not a community amenity contribution to meet your financing obligations. We have our own expectations in doing a rezoning, and that includes providing a certain level of contribution in either affordable housing or recreation, or you can refer to the policy. But what I see here is an offer to meet your financing obligations with and that's about it. And I mean, I guess we'll just agree to disagree on that 10-year period. Other projects that have come through have been able to meet that, and maybe the financing environment and the cost of building has changed. But if that's the case, then I would want to see a little more information on why it wouldn't be possible to have a longer term than 10 years on these units in order to meet what our expectations are around these rezonings. So I appreciate your answer. I'm not sure if that's quite the way that I see it, but thanks for providing it.
Great. Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. I've just to the question of what we've done in the past at this council table, I can only think of 2 developments where we've negotiated affordable housing into a private development, and it was the Best Western comes to mind, and Ryan Road near Superstore. And my recollection is that we used the 10-year, but I'll leave it to staff to confirm that. I don't know if anyone, that doesn't look like anyone at the table has that information at their fingertips. But I'd also, I love that we have.
Mr. Garbett,
Yeah,
the city
I'll finish up
manager.
quickly,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
right. I also love that we champion affordable housing so much at this table. I also want to point out that development is very risky business. It's not easy meeting the financial test to get something like this built, or any development. And I just want to be cautious that we don't scuttle development by asking for more than is really financially possible. So I'm not upset about the 10-year. Of course, I'd like to see, sort of in perpetuity or some other situation, but I think this is reasonable. And I'll leave it to you to move on. Thanks.
No, thanks, Councillor Frisch, for your comments, and Mr. Garbett.
Thanks. Staff had done a scan of the last 4 or so significant rezonings, and the response to affordability was varied. Under the previous OCP, there was not the same direction in our current OCP, so it's not particularly relevant. Those are no longer the applicable policies, and in some cases, cash was provided. In some cases, affordable units and a mix of units were provided, and housing agreements were required. Some reference to CMHC approvals before, and some not. The most recent rezoning under the existing OCP met our community requirements with the provision of 6 units, so they met the OCP target of 15. It was a slightly smaller project, and there wasn't a significant land lift in the zoning. So really relevant is our current OCP. What happened previously was on an old OCP. So, but I would say that the application in front of you, the recommendation is to go to second reading, and I think some pretty clear messaging from council will let the proponent know, and that will assist staff in some continued dialogue prior to consideration if council proceeds with second related to this pedestrian crossing standards, affordable housing, and the land use mix, the unit mix, because we will be in a position to require, if council moves forward, a housing agreement that's consistent with their policies, and I know they've been dealing with it.
Before you turn off your mic, or I'll make you turn it back on again. I think there was 2 questions. I'm not sure if both were answered. So one was the term, which was, the percentage, which was 15%, but the other question was around the time. So, and I don't know if that information was available or not for that, at least for that one.
I don't have the detail for the term, but Ms. Shealy, you may.
Yes, thank you. I believe Mr. Garbett's referring to the most recent one, which was 120 11th Street, and the term of that one is perpetuity.
So forever. Okay. All right, and there's an agreement around that as well that was entered into.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Housing agreement was registered on title through section 219, and as noted, it did have a smaller uplift. It only required 6 units.
Okay. All right. Much appreciated. I do see that Martin might want to respond, and then we have Councillor Morin as well waiting to speak. So Martin.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly comment on the term, because we are aware of the city OCP policy. We discussed this with the First National, the provider of the CMHC, and they haven't worked with a developer who did more than 10 years. They haven't heard of anyone doing perpetuity. It is not, First National is not doing, is not the only one who is working with CMHC. At the same time, they are significant providers. So we just wanted to provide you this clarity. And they are also, they are requesting healthy projects, and requesting more longer terms is reducing the health of the project and making it more risky, less likely to be approved potentially. So just
keep in mind, Martin, the other part that we got to notice, our homes are 25% larger than typically what developers build, and the cost of construction keeps going up from when the past projects were done. it's a moving target, and the target's always moving up. So you can't build 25% larger homes, have construction costs go up, financing costs go up, and then try to restrain the income. The form of this doesn't work. It makes it very unfeasible, like in terms of risk.
No, I think when we spoke yesterday, I mean, I did comment on the fact that I think our council has probably been ahead of the curve. And I'm personally quite excited to see that CMHC is requiring some of these things as well. But do acknowledge that this is something that our council has been pretty clear on for quite some time. So but with that, maybe what I'll do is I'll pass it over to Councillor Morin.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councillor McCollum around the term. And yeah, especially after hearing our city manager's clarification on the 11th Street development. I guess, things have been sort of all over the map a bit. And we do have a new OCP that we're dealing with. The other concern that I had, which hasn't been brought up, is the makeup of the units. And I know studios are recommended because they're less expensive. And I do hear the point about how perhaps these units will be bigger than other studios, but we have had housing agreements that have had a mix of sizes. And I know our housing needs assessment does talk about a variety of configurations, so not just studios that are needed. So that's another piece that I would really like to see a bit more of a mix of units. And I guess I would like to ask staff if this chart that has been provided to us with the average square footage, etc., if that is in line with what the information that we have, because my recollection is that we have included that developers have included not just studios and larger square footage units. So just curious if staff could clarify that. Thanks.
Is that clear?
Thank you. I will take the question. So just a point of clarity, when you're referring to square footage of units, was the question that you were considering ones that have been previously approved, like 11th Street, where different typologies or different sizes required?
Yeah, I mean, I know 11th Street was with the new OCP, and I know it's difficult to compare going, into the distance, history, but we have had affordable units that have not just been studios. We've had, I believe, 1-bedroom and even some 2-bedroom. And so I'm curious if that's sort of what I'm looking for, is clarification on that.
And thank you for clarifying. What I can offer is I don't have that information to hand right now. We didn't dive down into the typologies of the historic approvals and units, but it was definitely an item that we discussed with the applicant. We also aware that currently we're at a 4% vacancy rate, so also performers have changed as a result of that. But if I may, I did want to circle back, if I could, bearing a very brief discussion. The conversation around the time in which the housing agreement would extend to. Reviewing the CMHC program itself, they do provide 3 different levels of scoring for their program. This current application appears to be focused on level 1. There are benefits to applicants for increasing their timelines of housing agreements in terms of maximum amortization. So potentially they could look at a term of to 50 years. And that provides benefits to the developer in terms of their scoring with the CMHC financing. So I would say that that is potentially an option that I see available to the developer, and it may be worth more exploring outside of this council meeting tonight. And I think that's a conversation that staff would be willing to invite with the developer, following any direction by council.
Yeah, thank you. And Mayor, could I just have another comment?
Yep.
Thank you. I think, and I mean, this is more for council discussion benefit rather than for the proponents of the development, but I mean, you know, we always need to strike a balance. I hear that we you know, I hear Councillor Frisch's comments about yeah, we want to be able to not make things too difficult and for development, but we also need to strike a balance with what we're imposing on the community, and that's why we do have community amenity contributions, because we're trying to, I think, alleviate some of the pressure and that some of, you know, frankly, newer types of development, higher density has on the neighborhood. So, you know, I think that there needs to be a balance, and I'm just not quite sure if there's a complete balance that's being struck yet on this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councillor Morin. And Martin, I see you have your hand up, and then we'll go to Councillor Frisch.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to point out also, like, to this slide we are still looking at, that the OCP policy is requesting 15% of the density increase or land lift. At the moment, we are providing 12.8% of increase of the 12.8% of the land lift or density increase. If you combine it, but this doesn't factor in that the size of our units are 25-ish% larger than the typical units. So if you would factor the size, our larger units into this equation, we would be meeting the 15% land lift. We would be exceeding it actually, the requirement. So to me, it is a technicality why we are not meeting it. And also there was another project was mentioned. I would like to point out that we are in a city of Courtenay preparing a project of size of 137 residential units and 11 commercial units. It is very large project for the city of Courtenay so the risk is much larger for the developer. So we couldn't be compared with smaller project that has 20, 30, even 50 residential units. It is not comparable to us because the risk for such project is much, much smaller. And with regards the term, I know that we have explored the length of the term with the First National, and considering the size of our project and all the features we discussed, it doesn't work. And last comment from me personally, I would love to work with City of Courtenay on a project that would have, even double the number of the affordable housing units. But knowing the industry, working in the industry for 15 years, knowing the situation in the industry, my personal opinion is that we won't get approval, and other developers wouldn't get approval on moving forward with longer term or larger number of the units in the affordable housing program. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin, for those clarifications, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor. I was actually interested in moving the recommendation, and I actually don't know if there is a recommendation per se, but option 1, that we receive this for information and give first and second reading.
Okay, so that's been seconded, Councillor Morin, just so you're aware. So it's on the table, but we're still having discussion. And so Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm in support of the motion that I just seconded. But I just remembered that I had a question around the engagement piece that I just failed to ask earlier. And I think this is for staff. Just in the package that we received from the applicant, it does provide confirmation that it was advertised and that there was a session that was hosted. And then the like copies of what people provided came back, and it was kind of in a prescriptive form. That basically the questions were around, do we need housing in Courtenay and more commercial spaces? It seemed, and then what would those be, which seemed like valid questions to ask. But typically when we've done, or when we've received engagement from the community in the past, it's been a little bit more open-ended and not in this type of format. So I was a bit curious about that, if we don't really have any requirements and how the engagement's done. That was the first question. And then the second is, then we got a package today that was letters. I assume most of them are from neighbors, although the addresses have been redacted. So curious as to whether or not those folks did not attend and it came from a separate engagement. Or I'm just curious why the two pieces were different and not together. And yeah, if that's adequate to just do the prescriptive form. And yeah, if we have any comments on that. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. I think it's an excellent question and definitely worth unpacking for a few minutes. So as per the staff report, as attachment number 5, there's a community engagement summary report. The consultants actually held their own engagement. So this was nothing involving the city. So it was their own process that they instigated and implemented on their own, to their credit. And the report is a result of that independent consultation. With respect to the city's own role in this, at the time of this application, we didn't have in place our current procedure, which is a community information meeting. So today, we would most likely hold a community information meeting, which is led by the city, and the applicant is responsible for the meeting itself. But we work very closely with them within that framework of a community information meeting, which is more formalized through our own bylaw procedures. With respect to the comments that you've received in the package prior to this meeting, the city does have an obligation to do a public notice. That public notice is to let people know that there'll be no public hearing associated with this application, but they still have an opportunity to provide written comment to council. So that's the information that council has received. You're welcome.
All right, thanks for that clarification. And Councillor Frisch.
And just quickly, I did find that quite odd as well, the fact that the pet store was listed. I mean, there's a pet store next door to this, so it is kind of odd. I'm not sure how you decided what you were gonna put on this list, and maybe you want to comment on that. There's also a gas station across the street, which kind of has a convenience store in it. So I'm wondering if these are businesses you already have earmarked for that space. Is that why you pick these ones? And that's for the proponent, that question.
Okay. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, how did you come up with the 4 kinds of businesses that you thought you would suggest that may or may not be useful for the community? Pharmacy, grocery store, pet store, other.
That we were going with our previous experience, and along with that, we had additional space for the attendees to fill up if they would like to see any other commercial spaces.
We just thought, what services would they want there, right? So we kind of led with that. So this is something that you see, because we want to also kind of use it like a survey to get some feedback from the community as to sort of what kind of amenities they wanted. And we did some research on common amenities that would be needed in a mixed-use building, and those are the common ones that came up. So sometimes when you want feedback, you need to stimulate their thoughts of what's possible. They might not think, having a pharmacy is possible, right? So, hey, this is possible. This is something you want, but we're open to other suggestions.
Yeah.
So that's how the survey was created.
Thank you.
Yeah, And obviously coffee shops came up a few times, and I think steakhouse jumps out as well as
Yeah.
one of the things that people were interested in. Excellent. Thanks for that clarification. And back to Councillor Morin, and I think we're getting close to wrap up.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I had some questions about the public engagement piece as well, and I'm trying to follow along here. So the forms that were submitted, how were those gathered? Because it seems like the comments that we received in our package are very different from those forms, but I would also add that those forms are very limited because they're asking if you support housing. Well, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who would say no to that question. So, and then you're asking what commercial, um, uh, what commercial businesses, what commercial you would like in the community. So, whereas the other comments are really seem to be more specific to the neighborhood and the neighbors. And again, I mean, there are many people who are upset that there are no public hearings anymore, and I'm not saying that that's the best way to gather feedback. I think that there's problems with public hearings for sure. But I also think that well, I know that we did have several comments that were submitted, and I just want to make sure that we hear those voices, and and that is considered in this decision, and how and where we go from here. So, yeah, I'm just curious if we are supposed to have a public information meeting, then are we able to do that properly going forward? And yeah, and just the answer to the question around like these forms, I guess I just don't know how valid they are in terms of the type of feedback that we're looking for.
I'll pass it over to the city manager.
Perhaps I'll start. So the province has fundamentally altered the way that we do these things. Municipalities are regularly providing feedback to the province because in some cases it isn't in the interest of the developer. Often we had a very good engagement process and public information meeting process that the city had successfully used for many years. Legislation changes, and now developers are pivoting to try and work with neighborhoods because they know that the existing situation without public hearings and the like can have a bunch of unintended consequences. So, I think it's a definite shortcoming of the legislative changes that have been made, and no doubt we'll be hearing more about that next week at UBCM. And then, with respect to the materials, and I'll defer to staff in the Development Services Department.
Sorry, could you repeat that last question?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess my question is the forms that were provided by the developer are basically two questions. Do you support housing? And then what commercial enterprises do you support? And I really don't see how that is, yeah, I just don't see how that's factored into this decision. Whereas the other package that we received of the different emails, et cetera, are very much specific to people in the neighborhood and their impacts. So yeah, I guess I'm just wondering where these forms, the people filling out the forms, like where did those people come from? And why is there such a discrepancy between the two sets of feedback?
If I can respond to this, we had a bunch of forms at the meeting that were handed out, and some people collected more forms and they left with them. We have received some forms by email, if I recall, as well. So that's what I can say to that. And at the same time, if I recall the design of the form, there is space to share any comment concern whoever is filling it up. We were not limiting them to say this only or say that only. They could say whatever they wanted, and the overall feedback from the comment was positive. I don't believe I recall any significant negative feedback. I recall only positive feedbacks. Maybe
We
Monica can
also
speak a bit more to it.
we also advertised this in the newspaper, even though it was not required by the city, but we wanted to do this. It was advertised in the newspaper, and some people attended as well. And if people would not support, then there's the checkbox, and if you don't support, then you don't
Check it off.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
check it off. That's
Yeah.
And we may be going into the weeds just a little bit. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. O'Connell just for a second.
Yeah.
Thank you. So through the mayor to Councillor, Councillor Morin, one of the pieces is in any one of these public input periods or how we're receiving comments from the public or input, whether it's through a survey, through in-person interactions that we've observed, through submission of comments, if it's a piece where council is receiving various pieces of information, so it is absolutely appropriate for council to be looking at the applicability of the comments or the questions that were asked, how the individuals responded to those, and then determining on an individual member of council basis what weight you're going to assign to each of those comments in the consideration of your decision-making process. So for example, the open-ended comments that may or may not be directly attributable to people's perceptions on this specific development, that is something for council to consider relative to the more attributable comments by residents who have submitted their addresses and made more specific comments. Those are things that council would need to weigh. When we receive feedback, it's not a straight up numbers game, number opposed, number in favor, number with concerns. It really is contextualized based on where council believes their decisions or their values or viewpoints can be swayed by one person's perspective over another. So developers that submit a form that is not attributable, council can interpret that and apply the weighting in your decision-making as you see fit, especially when compared. Unfortunately, it's not possible to determine why someone chose one step over another because we're not prescriptive in that. But that is absolutely appropriate for council to be making that determination as to how much clout you put towards each of these comments and the method in which they were collected, received, and the content and quality of the content contained therein.
Yeah, thank you. That makes complete sense. When I see we need more housing in Courtenay with a one box and then we need commercial spaces, to me, that has nothing to do with people who are in the neighborhood. It doesn't give addresses. It doesn't talk about those other impacts. So I will be, looking at that. There's a few lines down below, but again, what does that mean in the big picture? So to me, they're very, very different types of feedback. And I actually see the emails that have come in with, addresses and specific, feedback specifically about the development as it's presented to be more relevant. So, okay, thank you.
And City Manager, Mr. Cartman?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Sometimes I provide some historical commentary. It's really beyond the control of either staff or the applicant to address the form under previous approaches that we had that the province has taken away. We would have been directly involved in the undertaking here on a public information meeting, and we would have been actively soliciting input. And so again, I would acknowledge that people are going to provide feedback in whatever form they choose, and it won't be constrained potentially either by a developer's questionnaire. But under the previous format, we handled the public information meetings, and the city was in charge of determining kind of the form of input. So I think we should continue to provide some feedback to the province if we have the opportunity, because my experience with developers, they want to do their very best to make sure people who are going to be weighing in and on council have adequate ability to do that. And then council wants to, I think, have kind of like a consistent approach to receiving that feedback. And fortunately, the city so far hasn't had a number of very controversial applications, but there are other jurisdictions in Central Vancouver Island that are having, you know, hundreds of inputs here, which under the previous format, may have been a little bit more managed. But I'll leave it there.
Mhm. So lack of consistency and again, some of this information may be more valuable for the proponent rather than for us anyways, but I do see the proponent has their hand up, so I'm not sure which one he's going to talk or if all three, but I'll pass it over to you guys.
Yeah. Couple points to that. It wasn't a requirement to do this community information session, but in consultation with the planning department, they said it'd be nice if you did it, if you took the time and spent the money to do this as a courtesy to the community. So we said, fine, we'll do it, but there's no guidelines of what form to use. You know, had they say use this form, ask these questions, do this, we would have done it. But without that, we created our own form and we did our best. We were told by city planning, you know, and there was a city planner that attended as well. So they can speak to whether it was received positively or not. Like from attending it, there was not much pushback from the community. Community was overwhelmingly in support of what we were proposing. So now to have this like question that, you know, why did you do it this way? Why did you do it this way? There was no structure. We would have followed it if there was structure. As a matter of fact, we were told it wasn't even required to do. And I remember I had this conversation with the team, well, why are we doing it? They said, let's just get the community involved, let's get their feedback, let's you know, let's work with the community. So then we decided to do it and we attended it. So that's just the context and the background.
Thanks very much for that clarification on how we got to where we are, and maybe there is something in the process that can be tweaked in the future for some consistency. So appreciate that feedback. I don't see any further questions or comments from council. So I think we're at the point to vote on the motion, which is the one presented by staff to pass first and second reading, along with the comments that were made today. So I'll call that vote right now. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. I believe, Councilor Morton, were you opposed? You put your hand up a little later, so I just want to confirm.
Yes, I mean, I just don't know if this, if first and second is going to, I guess, address some of the things that were brought up today, but perhaps I'm wrong. It is challenging being on Zoom. I'm not catching everything, so I don't know if staff wants to clarify that, but I just want to make sure that the things that we've raised today would be included in moving forward.
There was a point of order that we were just clarifying your vote, which I believe was no. That clarification isn't really a clarification to get after the vote. It's more before the vote.
Yeah,
so
I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, we're at where we are right now. Mr. Garbutt.
Thanks, Mayor. We're having an adventurous meeting today. Following this vote, I think staff will speak to what we look at next steps, but council could give direction that staff engage with the proponent on a number of items here. And we've kind of heard, but that would be a formal way to ensure that between second and third reading, specific items are discussed with the applicant.
All right. Okay. So hopefully that gives a measure of comfort, and with that, I think we can potentially make a decision. We have PTE, which is coming up, which is going to be a lengthier conversation, and quite a few other things. So I'm wondering if we want to take a bit of a break now for dinner, and then come back and finish off the rest of the meeting. Does that sound adequate for everybody? So we'll take about a 20-minute recess for dinner, and then we'll come back and continue the meeting. Okay. Thanks very much to the proponents, and hopefully we'll keep the conversation going. And if you got any questions, you know how to reach out to myself and city staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's all good. Councillor Moran, we're probably just a couple of minutes away, 2-3 minutes. Just as a reminder that council members are going to have to stay in the meeting regardless of other needs. All right, everybody, we're going to get started 1 minute ago. If everybody could take their seats. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get going on the second part of our council meeting. Started with 6.2.1, the building amendment bylaw 3193, implementation of the BC zero carbon step code. And I think I'm going to be passing over to Mr. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff would like to present the bylaw number 3193 for council's consideration for first, second and third readings to amend the building bylaw number 3114. This amendment is to incorporate the zero carbon step code and the timelines of EL3 and EL4 that council adopted at the regular meeting on the 30th of July 2025. In addition to the implementation of the zero carbon step code, staff have also taken the opportunity to update the bylaw to reflect the new municipal enforcement bylaw that was adopted back in May 2025, and text amendments for better clarification that have been identified since the adoption of the bylaw in 2024. Staff are happy to answer any questions regarding the amendment. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks very much. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think firstly, I'll move the recommendation if that's okay. If there's a second, yeah, there's a seconder. And just a question for staff. I wonder if you've had any feedback from the building community, retailers, and what came to mind when we were contemplating this is that some vendors might have stock of gas appliances or gas this or gas that. And I guess I was just wondering if you've had any feedback from the community about pushing ahead with a faster timeline on this. Through the Mayor to Council, staff haven't received any response regarding the proposed implementation. So. And do you feel like the community is aware that we're moving ahead with this advancement? I believe they are aware. Certainly the developers are. My opinion is this is going to be a requirement regardless, so they're going to move forward with that. Great. Well, thanks for getting this to us.
And City Manager, Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, through the Mayor, we did have the Development Services Department hosted a bit of a roundtable session on a number of topics for the development community. A couple of members expressed some questions about that, and I fielded some questions in that regard. But I think the general consensus is, because it's not a prohibition on the utilization of that, it's the primary focus. And Mr. Preston educated me personally, actually, when I assumed that I had gas as my primary heating and the like, that most of the developers are in that situation now for new construction, and renovations, don't fall necessarily in these categories. So I think there's still sufficient choice for people, particularly when it's really the primary heating and cooling is mostly affected by that. So I just offer that, and we will continue to engage with the building community about these on an ongoing basis, and we'll certainly report back to council.
Thanks, Mr. Garbutt. I don't see any further questions in the room or online, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And the motion carries. All right, we'll move on to consideration of 2026 permissive tax exemptions. And if there's anybody who has a conflict of interest, now is time to announce it, which will cause a problem because we only have quorum. But I believe it was just Councillor Jolicoeur that had a potential conflict in the past. Oh, yep, and Councillor Hillian, who's also not here. So I think we're good to go, and I'll maybe pass it over to Mr. Legemeyer.
Nice to be here once again. So the permissive tax exemption bylaws before you today have been prepared under the existing exemption policy with the additions of including not-for-profit daycares, and that the permissive tax exemptions are guided by policy priorities and cardinal directions of the official community plan. The existing policy provides a cap to the total exemptions equal to 2% of prior year's taxation, which would give a current year cap of $740,000. The proposed bylaws, as prepared today, have the total municipal exemption hovering around $575,000. So we're well within the limit. There were 4 new applications or applications that saw substantial change. I'll walk through them. The Comox Valley Lifeline Society, they're recommended for an exemption as they meet the policy. The Kiwanis Village Society, a property they recently took over, provides low-income housing for seniors. Housing is not explicitly identified in the current policy, and therefore staff can't recommend an exemption. The Whitechain Friendship Center has seen a redevelopment of a former parking lot. It was subject to permissive tax exemption in the past, but with a substantial change in the services offered there, they're being brought up here. So again, they're operating a 40-unit supportive housing. Again, the policy doesn't explicitly support housing, so staff can't recommend providing an exemption to this property. And finally, the Salvation Army Church is an interesting one. The church is located at 1580 Fitzgerald, and historically the church would have received a statutory exemption. But since the church is currently under construction and is not holding active church services, it doesn't qualify for a statutory exemption. That brings it in that it could qualify for a permissive tax exemption. However, since there are no services being offered from the specific location, staff can't recommend that it receives an exemption, because if we put the lens on, we're looking at the specific property in question, services aren't being provided to the community. Once council gives 3 readings to bylaws, however which way to determine, staff would arrange the statutory required advertising for 2 consecutive weeks. And we had planned to bring back the bylaws for adoption at the regularly scheduled October 15th council meeting, which gives adequate time to meet the October 31st adoption deadline. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And I'll echo some words that Councillor Cole Hamilton made at a previous council meeting on other topics, but really when we're talking about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. And I think that's really what we're being asked to consider today. And I do have one question about the Kiwanis one. And you may have said this, but I didn't hear it, but the thing that's in here is talking about the 40% from taking it over. What was the permissive tax for the previous owner, which I think was BC Housing?
The permissive tax for the property under BC Housing, it was not exempt under BC Housing.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate it. And you may just need to keep your microphone on now, because I think everyone's got questions. So I'm going to pass it over to Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This, of course, came up a little bit last week when we were talking about our policy and just how it's silent on housing, although we do have some grandfathered in housing projects. And just the recognition that they are different than what we're currently providing. I mean, the intent of the permissive tax exemption is providing services in the community. And while housing is certainly a need in the community, it's not a service that's being necessarily delivered in a public way. It's individuals that are that have a need, and that needs being met through these housing developments. But it does put the city in a tough spot because we want to see more affordable units come online, and yet we do need to receive revenue in order to provide the other services that we provide. And you know, we have targets of you know, a lot more affordable units than we have now. And we're going to get to a point where if we were to continue on and treat these the way that they had been in the past, that we just won't have the resources to do this. And so I was looking at what some of our neighboring municipalities do, and definitely housing does not usually fall into permissive tax exemption policies in other communities. And specifically, Nanaimo has updated theirs in recent years, and they do have some good language around permissive tax exemption. And one of the things that they identified is that affordable units do not meet their requirements. It's not part of their policy, but they do advise that they would encourage housing providers that have covenants on their properties to go to BC assessment and have that recognized, because if the property is not receiving the same type of revenue, that they can get an adjustment to their assessment, and therefore they can get a reduction in what is due tax-wise. It's just coming in through a different mechanism than a permissive tax exemption. It kind of belongs on the assessment side. And so I'm wondering if we know about that, if we're providing that info back. It seems like there is still another avenue. It's maybe just not through this process in which these properties could, in fact, see a reduction to maybe what would currently be charged. And I'm wondering if you have any information on that or can provide some context.
I have not specifically looked into that, and I can't make any further comment, but it seems like a reasonable approach.
And then furthermore, I did also see that there was policy specifically for BC housing funded supportive units, which I think perhaps the WACHE may fall into, that it's beyond just non-market, but there is maybe services attached. And there could be exceptions made. And of course, I'm speaking to policy that is not the city of Courtenay's, but this is under review here, that if there is no provision for property taxes to be paid with their contract through BC Housing, that a permissive tax exemption could go in place for a short period of time to allow the service provider to get those in place through their housing agreement. Because BC Housing should be paying those. And if those are not in the contract, then that's maybe a place where the municipality could step in short term rather than ongoing. So those are kind of two things that I hope we could at least communicate in these circumstances, so that we're not just saying no, but yeah, making sure that we're working in partnership while not making it unsustainable financially to just waive taxes on these types of projects.
All right, thanks so much for that. And I've added BC assessment. I always talk to them at UBCM, but I will be specifically asking. I'm not sure if other councilors are going to be talking to BC assessment, but I think definitely be a great question to ask them to see how that can be leveraged for sure. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I just wanted to speak to the Kiwanis Village example. I mean, they are grandfathered in, as you mentioned. I would assume that was done because affordable housing was valued at the time to the community. And I guess I didn't realize that it was a grandfathering situation and somehow didn't fit into the bylaw. It seems to me that you know, there should be some support for them in their new property. It does feel a lot like the province is downloading on us. So that's maybe a conversation we need to pick up at the provincial level as well. It seems a little unfair to straddle each community with these costs instead of taking it from the, you know, the larger provincial budget. So I'm not really sure where to go on that. I guess I wonder if staff's position is simply, this is what our rules say, therefore we don't support it, or is it beyond that? Is there some other reason why staff don't think we should give them the exemption on their new property?
The guidance is strictly taken from the policy.
Right. And we have the authority as council to say we think this fits in. We have that other category, and we could slide it in under that, which I know some councilors want to get rid of, but anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm inclined for this year in any case to give them the exemption, because I think the housing that they provide is actually extremely affordable. I believe it's meant generally for seniors, which is a very high need group right now in the Valley. And yeah, I mean, I don't know their balance sheet. I don't know where that leaves them if we don't do it. So those are my comments for now. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Frisch. And yeah, I can definitely say, you know, housing has been, I think, a top priority for this council. And, you know, I often comment that, you know, my top three priorities are housing, 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 whether that's market housing, non-market housing, or shelter, which I see as three separate types of housing. So for myself, I definitely see us, especially this year, while we develop and sort of really articulate out what our longer term permissive tax exemption policy is going to be, to work with the proponents that are in front of us. I mean, they're not in front of us, but the three examples that we have on how yeah, I see you, but the people in Zoom land don't necessarily see you, unfortunately. But to look at that opportunity to say, you know, for this year, and unfortunately in my document it actually blocks out, I think, the PTE value, unfortunately, but I do know that it is a significant value. Like it's a large tax amount. But as I previously said, I'll definitely be following up with BC Assessment at the UBCM conference next week to see if that's a tool that, if it's being utilized in other communities, how we can most effectively use it as a city and help organizations within our city with that. Because I believe there's probably lots of organizations that don't even ask for PTE, like they don't even know that it exists and that they'd potentially be eligible. And again, when it comes to housing, it's definitely something that I wouldn't necessarily say for just market housing, but when we're talking about non-market housing and shelters, to really give a hand when we can, I do see that as a role of local government, even though it's a mandate of the province. So if there's a way to get it through the BC assessment side of things, so it's not as onerous on us, totally I'm going to be following up on that. I saw Councillor Morin's hand go up, and I think both of you have spoken now. Does that make sense? Yeah. So Councillor Morin, you're up next, and then the other councillors are ready to speak as well.
Thanks, Mayor. It appears as though there's several housing organizations that are grandfathered. And I know that we are going to be taking a deeper dive into this policy and for future. So I just wanted clarification on that from staff, that it looks like there's Dawn to Dawn and there's Braidwood and numerous others. Because I guess I'm leaning to, for this particular year, looking at Kiwanis and Wachier, sort of just while we're working out the new policy. So like a one year, one time exemption, and then we will have had the discussion on the new bylaw and policy. Is that correct? That we have several housing
Yes, there are
organizations?
several housing organizations.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
prior years.
so I know that we are looking at, I mean, when we say grandfather, I mean, the definition of that is forever. I guess until we come up with something completely different. I just want to know, it just seems unfair that if we're going to exempt all housing, that we have two places that are not going to be receiving anything this year while we're trying to work all this out.
Well, and I think that's why it's before us. So staff have just literally, I believe, presented us numbers based on our own policy. So their job isn't to change policy. That's our job. And you know, when we look at those grandfathered ones, or the ones that are at a higher percentage, especially because they're not part of the thing, they were probably voted on by a previous council to be an exception. And so I think that's what's before us today. And I tried to articulate a little bit. For me, this is us discussing the spirit of what we're trying to do, and what this bylaw does, rather than the letter of it. The letter of the bylaw is what staff have presented to us. What we're discussing, I think, for me, is what is the spirit of this? And is there a way to look at it differently than what the policy states? So does that help?
Okay, I'll let you work it out in the room then.
With that, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about the regional district portion. I think I asked this question last year, but when we give someone an exemption, we pay the city's piece and we also pay the regional district's piece. Is that right? So we technically exempt them from both pieces.
The regional district requisition, what they ask of the city to pay doesn't change. Our overall assessment that we spread their requisition over, when you exempt a property, it reduces it. So the remaining properties pick up that piece of foregone assessment. So the PTE recipient does not pay. All other property owners in the city pay for it.
Contribute to make that up. And I guess would it be odd to take a stance that we only want to exempt our portion of the taxes and not these other portion, the regional portion of the taxes?
That is a very challenging piece to do, because part of the complexity is what assessment base the regional district service used originally, either the hospital or the general, and that varies from service to service. Pulling those apart and determining where we want to go is work on the regional side. There could be a method where you change all assessment bases to the general, and then you'd have a better exemption. However, that is not the framework we're operating under.
I understand. Thanks for that. In general, I guess I'm struggling with some of the other ones that have come up. I think actually the Wache Friendship Center, it makes sense that they get the exemption, but at the same time, I wonder if financially they need the exemption. And so I know we've talked at the table a bit about, like, is there a need base here? I know that building was mostly funded by government grants, I believe. So I wonder if they are in fact in a position to cover those costs and still be able to support those not-for-profit housing units. So that thought also comes to mind. I thought I'd share that. And I'll pass it on for now. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that idea, is it something that benefits the city of Courtenay residents or something that, benefits the whole valley? When, especially when you start looking at the nonprofits, a lot of them are, the Comox Valley, fill in with whatever you want. But because the city is the center of the Comox Valley, they definitely are more likely to have their head offices in Courtenay or the services they provide. Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to get into a deeper policy discussion here, but I mean, to me, the role of the city is to have policy in place that supports the development of affordable housing. I don't know that it should be asked of the city that we also provide a subsidy ongoing for every housing development that's deemed non-market, which is really going to be the question going forward. Is once a housing development is in place and it's deemed non-market, do those units have an obligation to pay into city services, or are we going to provide a subsidy and take that role on from the province? I mean, the province is who is supposed to be responsible for providing that type of service. So it's a challenge because, it's a recognized need in our community, and we certainly recognize that too. I guess based on the discussion, I would probably lean towards allowing for the Kiwanis Village to receive their property tax exemption based on how we've treated previous and that we haven't finished the policy update. And then they could be included in what we are doing going forward. I think the Wache, I feel a little bit differently about, in that it is a contracted service with BC Housing. That's my understanding of it. And I would be open to providing them maybe that same consideration, but only after confirmation that they don't receive any funding from BC Housing for property taxation. And if they don't have that in place, then we could include them in the same way, give them the same treatment and give them a year to sort that out with their funding provider. I don't think that's the role of the city to provide that ongoing funding piece. It's not one of the services that we're tasked with delivering with the taxation that we collect. So, I mean, it's hard to say no to something, but I think we need to think about what this looks like 10 and 15 years out if we're serious about getting more affordable housing built. So I think that's kind of where I land with that. And I don't know if others share my thoughts on it. I might be an outlier here on that, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and again, we're being asked to make a decision for today, knowing that we have a bigger discussion, as you acknowledge, you know, so we have that bigger discussion coming. And then the other one that was on the list was also the Salvation Army church location, which seems to be caught in a technicality where they're rebuilding a location. So because of that, because church activities are not being able to be done because it's under construction, they're not able to be exempt. So, but I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, I guess I had a question about the number of units that are being provided by the two organizations. I'll note that the Woodshea Friendship Center at 40% requires a $30,000 exemption, whereas the Kiwanis Village only requires maybe $2,700 or $2,800. So do we know what the number of units that each are providing? I mean, I guess we know what Woodshea is. I believe it's around, is it 20 units or somewhere in there?
I think Watchay's 35 or
35?
Is it in the report? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, my
Mr. Garvin.
apologies if I missed
He's
it
got
before.
he's got the numbers at his fingers.
Through the mayor to council on page 3 of the staff report, 125 of the agenda, the reference to Whiteshea indicates there's a 40 unit supportive housing complex.
40, thank you. And the Kiwanis, was that in the report as well?
20? In the new location. So that was 20 in the new location, and that's in the report as well.
Yeah, and I guess what you know, it's a much more expensive exemption for one than the other if you do it per unit. So yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder why we build affordable housing that is so expensive when we're just trying to get people housed. But yeah, I'm inclined to ask staff if there's a suggested motion to include the Kiwanis Village in this year's tax exemption.
Mr. Garvin.
Through the mayor, Councillor Frisch, staff have anticipated some requests if council wanted to add or subtract, which I'm not hearing any subtractions. And so I believe we're prepared with information if we get direction on the ones that are listed to be able to add them to a respective bylaw. And we're able to do that, if I understand correctly, Mr. Langmar?
Yeah, option 2 in the report provides specific folios matched to the recommended exemption amount from the report.
Okay, let me have a quick look at those and figure out which are which.
All right. Thanks for that. And we don't have, oh, Mr. Garvin.
Yeah, through the mayor, perhaps staff can tell council which folios they're referencing.
Yeah, the polling numbers are.
Yeah, based on the staff report, just to assist.
Yeah, we can convert those folio numbers, which are very computer friendly, to maybe names and addresses.
Well,
Oh, Kiwanis Village is folio 750012.
Okay.
The Wache Friendship Center is folio 1171.006. And the Salvation Army is folio 1074.050.
And so option 2 is saying for Kiwanis and Wache at 40% and the Salvation Army at 100%.
Statutory, it's a
Yeah.
religious
Yeah.
facility. That, just to clarify the difference.
Councillor McCullough.
Is there time in this process? Should we only include Kiwanis as I was suggesting, and I'm also in agreement of including Salvation Army. I think it's a fair application of the intent, like you said, rather than the letter. And then in terms of Wache, is there time for us to consider this addition after we've requested information on whether or not they do receive funding from BC Housing to cover taxation on the property?
Or is the decision, do we have to get the ball rolling today?
Yeah, do we
given
have
the-
to
the
decide on
deadline?
Wache today, or could that one piece be considered at our next council meeting and still meet the requirements for the bylaw?
An approach that council could take is include Wache in first 3 readings. Proceed with direct staff to seek information. That way the required notification will be made as if Wache was included. At the time of final consideration, an amendment could be made to remove a property.
Or you'd have to rescind third, I believe. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to rescind third still, redo third, then wait for adoption. Is that, oh, Adriana, you are the expert.
I think we're talking about having a special meeting, because we do have to do the notifications. We have 2 weeks of notifications, and you have to make the amendment before 3rd reading. So it's certainly doable, but it's likely going to require a special meeting if that's what you want to do.
And is there an option then to just have a separate motion with regards to that one exemption, so that if we were to pull it out, we wouldn't have to redo, or do they all have to go
You
together?
mean have it in a separate bylaw?
Yeah,
We'd have to have a whole new bylaw
Yeah,
today.
I don't
Okay,
think it's
yeah.
possible to do that tonight. You have to
All
have
right,
it in
well, we
writing
don't
in
have
front
a
of
lot
you.
of-
I like the idea, you're looking for solutions, but I think unfortunately, given the runway that we have in front of us, we're basically picking our flight path, and for myself, I again, I've probably said it over and over again tonight, but you know, we can make a decision tonight that next, when we do that bigger deep dive into things for next year, it gets not just this, but everything can kind of be sorted out to a larger extent. So, but
You know, I have a different suggested, I don't know if this would fit with council, but I mean, we do have an affordable housing fund, and if we were to remove it and then find out that there isn't funding in place for their under their housing agreement, then maybe we could look at another funding sources. You know, if we put them in a difficult financial position. I don't want to
not,
close the
though,
door
yeah.
on that, but I also don't want to use this as a tax exemption that maybe is already being funded through another party. I think we have a duty to make sure that we're, you know, applying this fairly. So I feel like we could use some more information on that. But I don't know. I'll see what others have to say about that.
and to me, I love the troubleshooting that's happening right here on the floor. My only question as a follow-up to that is, and I believe there's room, but do we have an idea of where our gaming funds are if we decided to would that amount be comfortable?
That's an item we could discuss through the 2026 financial planning process, because the taxes aren't due on this property until July of 26. So it does leave time to research that, and it would be a reasonable approach. It would be kind of treated as a one-off grant in the spirit of providing what would have provided through a permissive tax exemption.
Mr. Carbon?
Thank you. If council wants to take that route, I want to make sure we don't lose track of that. So you can make a resolution, you could pass a resolution that addresses, if I'm summarizing the conversation, Kiwanis and Salvation Army, and then have a subsequent direction to consider the matter in the 26 financial plan to fund that. And that would give That's a significant amount of time to get the information for budget.
Okay, so no motions on the floor just yet. I do see Council Moran has a question or comment, so I'll pass it over to her. Council
Thanks,
Moran.
Mayor. Yeah, I'm inclined to go with that second option, including those folios, all three of them. I mean, I don't know for sure whether PC Housing is providing that, but I know that Wachier was already in hardship during the construction process because they weren't getting DCCs covered, et cetera. And I believe we covered their DCCs, but I don't think the regional district did. So I'd be skeptical that they're getting a bunch of extra money from PC Housing. I think that, but I could be wrong. They also note in the email they wrote to us that the decision was shocking. I don't think it would be as shocking if they had the money, if they, you know, if BC Housing was covering it. So I think for this year, if we can include those three folios until we get our policy, like knowing that it could completely change and none of them may be eligible next time around, depending on what we do. I just think, you know, everyone's struggling, nonprofits are struggling. It seems like it's a long ways away, but yeah, that would just be my inclination, is to include, you know, to go with that option 2 with those three folios and not have to muck around with going and finding information and then figuring out whether we're going to take it from this pot or that pot to help them out. Like, I would be surprised if they were getting a bunch of extra money from BC Housing, especially since we know that the supportive housing, well, suffice to say, BC Housing has not always, you know, given extra money for many things such as supports, etc. So that's my inclination, and I would move that.
You have moved that, or you're going to move it?
Yeah, I'd like to move that option 2 with those. I don't know what the folio numbers are, but for those three, Kiwanis, Salvation Army, and Wachier, all three of them.
Okay. And with the same percentages, the 40% for the two residential properties and 100% for the
Whatever Adam talked about earlier that he
All right.
said was covered in option 2. Thanks.
Okay, option 2, we're just waiting for a seconder. Okay, it didn't get seconded, so it's not on the floor just yet. And with only 3 councillors, we'll see how this goes. We're going to pass it over to Councillor Frisch, who has a different option. So we'll all just have to listen carefully. Have you emailed a copy of it to anybody? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for those comments, Councillor Moran. I mean, I get that everyone's struggling, and I'll just emphasize that actually everyone, including the taxpayers, a lot of our homeowners are also struggling. And to me, like $30,000, that's $750 a door compared to Kiwanis at maybe $150 a door. It is a lot of money, and somebody does have to pick up that tab. And so I'm actually inclined to move option 2. Without an exemption for 1074.050, which I believe is Wachier Friendship Center, with us when making a subsequent motion. So I'll move option 2 without the exemption for folio 1074.050. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. You're right. It is 1171.006.
That's Wachier.
That's the one I'd like to not have in the motion.
So that's been seconded, which is option 2 without the Wachier on there. It's been moved and seconded.
With the intent to make a further motion after this to include funding for them, a conversation about funding for them if we find that they are indeed in need of it from a different funding source.
All right, so potentially gaming funds or
Yeah,
something
but
if they're not
to be
covered.
discussed after this, yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's been moved and seconded, and Councillor McCollum, speaking to the motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm in support of taking this approach. And I certainly share some of your concerns, Councillor Moran, and I don't want to see this organization in a financial bind, which is why I want to ensure that there's a different path forward. But if there is a lack of property taxes covered in a BC housing agreement, that's not extra money. That is, they have a contract that they are supposed to be covering the cost of delivering this service. And so if that isn't in the contract, I would rather this be an opportunity for the city to provide a bit of pushback on that and facilitate that conversation going forward, while still giving us an avenue to make sure that we don't put one of our community partners in a bad financial situation. But it is BC Housing's responsibility to provide the cost of the services with their service providers. And I don't want the city of Courtenay to be the default funder to make up these funding gaps. So I just think this is maybe a better mechanism to just do that extra bit of diligence on this funding, and then we can address both things at the same time. And so while I do recognize that it is a little bit more work, I think we do need to start treating these exemptions the way they need to be, and that we're not picking up the work of the province and just continuing allowing for more downloading of costs, because we're in the thick of these problems, and don't want to have to say no to important things. So yeah, I just wanted to provide that context that I'm not looking to penalize them. I'm looking for an avenue to make sure that the province is doing what their responsibility is here in this situation.
Mr. Garvin.
I don't know if there's a vote about to be made. Can we just, staff are making sure, because we have timelines and notification, that the bylaws that we give readings are 100% accurate. So if council can just give us a minute as we follow up between our director of corporate services and our corporate officer, we're just triple checking. So just hold for a minute, because we do have a bylaw that's on the table as with the addition of the two folios, and we just need to determine 3194 if it includes those ones. And
Okay, yep. Staff are just conferring right now, Councillor Moran, and once that's done, I'll let you speak. We just want to confirm that everything that we're doing is 100%. Oh, yeah. This is where that Jeopardy music would come in handy. Oh, and we're getting it on the screen as well. Just so we can minimize the risk of a special meeting. And maybe I'll just ask a question to Mr. Langenmeyer, just as we're conferring this stuff. Would there be something that speaks to the Salvation Army, which is the 100% exemption, that it would only be for a single year under construction or until construction is completed? Just to confirm that.
So the bylaw being presented to you is a 1-year bylaw.
Okay.
So after 1 year, it will expire and no one will have exemptions unless council considers exemptions again next year.
Right. And if their construction is 100% and they're doing the church things there, then they will be captured under that bylaw.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Yep. I was waiting for staff. So staff all comfortable? Staff comfortable for, okay, so I think we're all good to continue the conversation as per what is on the screen right now. So Councillor Moran, this is what's been moved and seconded. If you'd like to speak to this.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm assuming there's going to be another resolution about the other
A subsequent
piece of
yes.
it? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I guess really I'd be speaking more to that subsequent, but yeah, I mean, I can anticipating the subsequent, I can live with this. I do think though that, and I completely agree with Councillor McCollum's comments. We are constantly doing the province's work. I have no argument with that. But I also see that, you know, we are looking at this policy because we have issues with how it's being determined, because I frankly would like to give the exception to Wattier instead of church parking lots. So anyway, that's just my view. Thanks.
All right, I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that was unanimous. So with that, thanks very much for the discussion. And then there's going to be a subsequent, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch again.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So with regards to what we've been speaking about, I'd like to move that we have staff request more information from the Wattier Friendship Center on their funding model, so that we can make a decision to offer them with some other option for their 2026 taxes. Is that clear enough? Or
I think it was specifically confirming if the Wattier property is, if the province is funding them to pay their property taxes or not, to clarify that. And if not, that the city would look to alternate funding to cover the taxes. My apologies.
If this then that, or are you just looking for the first?
just yeah.
Yeah.
Does that cover it? Councillor Moran, does that capture what you thought the conversation is? I know we're gonna, I mean, it hasn't been seconded yet, but we're in the massage.
But I don't see anything about paying if they're not getting funding from BC Housing.
So this will come back to council as this is going to direct staff to bring this back to council, and then with that information, then there would be yet another subsequent, or not, depending. Does that
Okay.
make?
Okay.
And but again, take a look at it. Councillor McCollum has an amendment, so it might be covering something. Just 1 second. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, maybe we could just add a bit of clarification and report back to council for determination if further funding is required, or if further funding is
For 2026 taxes.
yeah, report back to council regarding a potential grant for 20% in the amount of 40%. Yeah. there we go. Then it's documented what the reason is.
And so there's clarity in it.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're gonna double check the folio number. Mr. Garbutt, you had a comment? Oh, I missed you by that much. I got it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thanks. I think the proposed amendment makes clear the outcome following the research by information provided by Wache regarding this matter. And it just, I think that reflects the spirit of the dialogue previously. And our corporate officer is just checking our folio. Okay.
Yeah, just knowing that 3 out of 7 counselors aren't at the table tonight, I just think it's better if we have more reference points there on our intent. So I think that was moved by Frisch and seconded by me. Yeah.
I heard Councillor McCall.
It just, yeah.
There's no real choice tonight, although Councillor Morin can jump in at any point. I think this really captures the clarity of the discussion at this table to make sure, and hopefully gives that comfort to Wache that one way or the other, for at least this 2026 tax year, that we'll be working, and I'm sure we'll have an answer relatively quickly. So given the fact that I think there's been lots of discussion around this, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And motion carries. So thanks so much for staff for just making sure we have everything 100%. And again, this has both Wache and the folio numbers, so we've covered both to make sure we're talking about the right thing. And this is the first recommendation. And so that was first, second, and third for the first part. Yep. And yeah, so we voted on that, then we voted on the subsequent. So now we're on to recommendation 2 of 4. Ooh, we're changing it up. Very nice. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on recommendation 2? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries, and we'll move on to recommendation 3. And are there any questions or comments on recommendation 3? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? Motion carries. And then recommendation 4. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. And that gets us through those, and we'll move on to business license amendment bylaw 3199. And just again, a huge thanks for hanging in there as we got through this. And I'll maybe pass it over to Mr. Preston or Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. This staff report from Development Services is in response to council's direction at the September 10th meeting, where you're proposing a minor amendment to delete storefront cannabis retail and renumber the remaining fees. The implication of this bylaw amendment is that storefront cannabis retail would be considered the same as retail use. And if council has any questions, staff are here for answers. Sorry.
Fair enough. You can give questions too. It's Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, no question. I just wanted to appreciate staff for getting this on the very next agenda after council directed. So happy to support, and just wanted to recognize the expediency here. Thanks.
Does somebody want to move it? Thank you. Fantastic. I don't see any questions or comments, but yeah, I just want to echo. I mean, this is something that's been discussed for in excess of a year. So really glad, even though we thought there might be a bigger review of the business licenses, that at least this particular one that seemed to be really an outlier compared to the other business licenses can be dealt with for January. So with that, all those in favor? And motion carries, and we'll move into updated. updated subdivision and development servicing bylaw 3200. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. For council, through the mayor to council, we are unfortunately need to bring back our subdivision servicing bylaw. We had an error, administrative error. The purpose of this report is for council to repeal subdivision development servicing bylaw number 3190 in its entirety and give first, second, and third reading to new subdivision development servicing bylaw number 3200. The effect of this is to attach the schedules that were discussed with council. I will advise council that the implication of this was to provide the ability to delegate some variances to staff. We've notified any current applicants that were impacted by this to let them know that it'll be delayed back for consideration at the next council meeting. They were appreciative of us making it correct because it's important that we, if council may recall, that we are properly delegating the decisions and it's in the long-term interests of both the city and developers who are investing significant money in these developments. So again, we're available for questions if council has any.
All right, no questions or comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thanks for getting that caught up. And wow, this will go fast. Who's first on this one? Councillor Frisch, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin. And if there's none, I'll just mention the Keeping It Living fundraiser for Couscous Sum that happened on Saturday night that I was able to attend. Again, costs to remove some of the fill has gone up. And so it was a great event that was well attended. With that, we have an in-camera resolution. All those in favor? Motion carries and we are adjourned. Okay, so Councillor Morin, we are ending this Zoom meeting and we'll be starting the in-camera.
So do I have a different link then? Because I can't access my email, so.
Oh, your email went down. Can we just confirm everybody's
So
out and we're not
I can-
recording?
I can try to
We are
figure.
recording still.
Okay, I can. If someone wants to send me the I think I can access my email on my phone.